Well, it is after 5, so I think I'm going to get it started. Well, it is 5 o'clock, so nice to see some people here with us in the chambers for this meeting, and my colleagues, very nice to see you here as we start out a brand new year. It's a pleasure to be working with this team. So the first thing to do is to call this Committee of the Whole for the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for Monday, January 5th, 2026. And the first order of business is a roll call. Clerk Borling.
Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Commissioner Slaby.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Duncan.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. We don't have any communications this evening, so the next thing on our agenda is public comments. Just a reminder, public comments at the Committee of the Whole are 2 minutes. There'll be a public comment period at our business meeting that starts at 7. That's 4 minutes. You can comment on any item you would like. Please come forward, state your name, whether you live in the city, and you'll have 2 minutes. Thank you.
And thank you. I particularly want to welcome City Manager Hankins. I'm from Isaac, our local interfaith community organizing network, and I met you at our mingle and at your interview. And I want to say we are so pleased with your attitude of caring and respect for people who are unhoused. And we are so pleased with your experiences that will help us reduce our shamefully high infant mortality rate for Black babies, along with all the other kinds of great experience you bring to this job. Welcome, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Edward Nickerson. I live in the city of Kalamazoo at Northwind Apartments. About a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I came home. Tenants were inside the front doors, beating on the doors, let me out. I thought there was a big emergency, so I pried the doors open with my body. I got hurt a lot more. I've already been hurt several times because of their negligence. I realized that they took the emergency access bars off the doors and put stickers back up saying emergency access. That is not the only wrong thing that is going on by these people. Now, I don't know what the security guard downstairs was talking about, but it sounded like to me he was saying that we can't speak tonight. Maybe you ought to check it out. And there's stuff peeling from your ceiling. Hopes it's not asbestos. Have you heard about the PFAS thing and all of the food being contaminated because they gave it to farmers to use as fertilizer? Read up on it.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, Commissioners. It's a bit loud. I'm here today, proud resident of the Vine. My name is Caleb. I want to talk about last month. There was an incident wherein the KDPS was pursuing a dangerous criminal and did a sweep of the Vine neighborhood. Now, that was in pursuit of capturing this assailant, obviously determined to be a threat to the safety of the public. However, both I and then other neighbors were trying to alert the KDPS that the school buses were going to be arriving in 5 to 10 minutes. Now, I spoke with the drivers. There is no communication currently through KPS to have some sort of emergency alert. So what I'm proposing is that the City Commission, that KPS, Dr. Slade's a very good man, and representatives from KDPS sit down and establish a way where KDPS can alert KPS transportation so that our children are not getting off on the bus into what was determined to be a dangerous situation. There are alternatives that can be provided to KPS. Chief Webster is very good on security. So I think you could set a meeting or initiate a scheduling of a meeting in the next week. There could be a meeting of stakeholders by the end of the month where we can establish a communication system, not through citizens, but through the official channels to make sure our bus drivers know if they have to divert because KPS or KDPS is in active pursuit. I would love to take any specific questions or provide my contact information. I'd love to facilitate this. I've been a former member of the Vine Neighborhood Association Board. I am a veteran. I've worked with police dogs. I've worked with combat engineers. I know a little bit about a little. And about 12 different parents and a dozen other neighbors asked me to come speak on this. So I would appreciate your time and looking into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers that would like to provide a public comment for this meeting? Seeing no one, we are now working our way down to the topic for our work session this evening, and this is a training for Commission on Rezoning and Variance Request Process. Manager Hankins.
Thank you, Mayor. Rookie mistake. Thank you, Mayor. As stated, this is a training that I understand is intended to provide information to the Commission, and do have staff here, Christina from the city's Community Planning and Economic Development Department, and she'll be presenting the information for us tonight.
Thank you very much, Manager Hankins, and welcome, Christina Anderson.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. I'm going to start the presentation off, and then I'm going to call Attorney Charlie Baer to come up and finish off with some specific details related to the Open Meetings Act and a couple of other things for you. So we do trainings for our boards at least once a year in community planning and economic development, specifically the Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, Natural Features Protection Board, those boards that have different levels of judicial power that review requests from applicants around the city. And being a redevelopment ready community, RRC, which is a designation that the state gave us, the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation. One of the things that we need to do every year is train our boards. And, you know, in the past, we've really focused this training again on Plan Commission, ZBA, boards like NFP, and we thought this year with new commissioners and new city manager and a lot of zoning cases likely coming forward this year that it might be helpful to also have a similar discussion with you all to make sure that you're aware of what the boards do and what comes to you and how you then take those recommendations from the boards, review them, and approve or deny them. So the two boards that I'm going to start off with are our Plan Commission and our Zoning Board of Appeals. Our Plan Commission reviews a couple of different things. It reviews applicant-driven rezoning requests. So it also reviews city-driven rezoning requests, and many of you have been on the commission over the last few years where we've been slowly updating our zoning ordinance. The Plan Commission reviews both map amendments, changes to the zoning code, as well as changes to the text of the zoning code. Plan Commission reviews special use permits. A special use is a use that is allowed in a district, but it's noted as special use because it may not be appropriate for every single location within that district. And so it requires Plan Commission to review. Our Plan Commission also is in charge of technically site plan review, although they delegate that to staff every year as an administrative process. And Plan Commission also reviews site plans specifically in Western's BTR, Business Technology and Research Park, which was part of the establishment of that particular location. Zoning Board of Appeals, the big thing that it reviews are zoning variances. ZBA is also a judicial body, so they review appeals as well, particularly of decisions that staff makes, administrative reviews. The Zoning Board of Appeals also does interpretations of the zoning code when requested. and temporary use permits that are going to be around for more than 30 days. So just some background. What ultimately makes its way up to you are things from Plan Commission. ZBA makes the final determination for the cases it sees. Plan Commission makes some final determinations, like for special use permits, but zoning changes, whether it be map or text changes, are ordinances, which require a two-step review. They get reviewed by the Plan Commission. They make a recommendation to this body for ultimate review and decision. Sorry, what I just said. So real quick, just so you all are aware of the application process for the Zoning Board of Appeals, as well as for Plan Commission, just about any applicant-driven process, we really want to sit down with those applicants before they go through the process of writing a check, because there is a fee for these reviews. Filling out applications, we really want to sit down with folks to make sure that everyone knows what the code says, what the process entails, what they would need to bring forward for the request and so forth. So that way when they're submitting the application, they're submitting a complete application for our review. The Zoning Board of Appeals has some outreach requirements that are handed down by the state. Again, these are variance requests primarily is what the Zoning Board sees. The state says we need to publish about 2 weeks in advance in a newspaper of record, which for us is the Gazette, which has a couple paper publications a week, and so we aim for those, as well as letters to all property owners within 300 feet. Now, again, that is a state-required notice that the city performs for every request that comes before the Zoning Board of Appeals. We go to a public hearing, and the commissioners review the cases based on the staff report, based on public input, and based on the review criteria that are outlined in the zoning code and guided by the state. When the ZBA is reviewing a variance request, they look at there are a series of review criteria that are associated with the request being a use request. I would like to do a coffee shop in a residential area where coffee shops aren't permitted. That would be a variance of permitted uses. And they review dimensional variance standards, which is I want a setback, or I need to do a setback of only 15 feet from the front property line, where 25 feet might be required. That's known as a dimensional variance. And each of those have slightly different review criteria. When the Zoning Board of Appeals is reviewing these, when staff reviews these, all criteria outlined for the Zoning Board of Appeals must be met in order to give an affirmative answer, or an affirmative decision. The process for the Plan Commission starts off very similarly. We want to sit down with the applicant. We want to make sure that they understand the process they're going through. We want them to be able to submit a complete application when it's time to submit that application, so there's not confusion and back and forth. When outreach and notice also looks similar up to a point. So the state requires, again, both the ZBA and Plan Commission cases to have that state-required notice, the notice in the newspaper, and letters sent to property owners within 300 feet. We require some additional outreach depending on the request that one is making to the Plan Commission, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Plan Commission holds a public hearing, just like the Zoning Board of Appeals do, just like you do for ordinances. You'll hear at these meetings, staff gives a presentation for background. The applicant makes their presentation, and then there's public comment, and then the commission deliberates. With all of these boards, and including when you receive something from the Plan Commission, you receive a staff report that gives background on the request, details about the location that would be important in your decision, maybe past similar requests on the property or around the property. We try as staff to provide as much of a neutral background as we can to lay out the case and the facts of the case. We talk about what public outreach has been done, whether it was the standard state requirement, or if more was done, or if the applicant went on their own and did some door knocking or had meetings, we report that. And staff also gives our review of the review criteria to help in the board's review and consideration. And I'm going to dig into those review criteria in a minute as well. As I mentioned earlier, Plan Commission makes the final decision for many things, but not for rezoning requests or map requests or text amendment requests. Those come to you. You hold a very similar public hearing that the Plan Commission does with applicant, with a staff presentation, applicant presentation, which is about 10 minutes, and public comment on the request. Before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about our public participation policy. Our public participation policy is most commonly used by city staff when we are initiating a project. And we go through and we use the policy to create a engagement plan or a public participation plan based on the depth and impact of a project. The policy also includes a section related to applicant-driven requests. And when they go forward before boards, because there are requests that staff and the city felt needed some additional conversation with the community for information purposes based on the different types of requests. So this table exists in our public participation policy. This policy is available online, and if you want a paper copy of it, I'm happy to print out and provide you a paper copy of it. Almost all of these requests require that city notice action, right, that the state lays down for us. But there are cases, particularly rezoning, planned unit developments, which is similar to a rezoning that results in a development project, and street vacations when there are real impacts to access and mobility. Those require additional conversations with the community. And so we request that the applicant send notice to the residents, reach out to the neighborhood association if there is one. If not, we help to connect them with folks and host a meeting so they can provide some additional information. And then they come back with the public hearing and report on these findings. You'll see that this table has Rs and Xs. Xs is required. I cut off the key, so, but Rs, it's optional when there's a variance request. So the Zoning Board of Appeals does not have that same extra layer of outreach, nor does the Plan Commission when it's a special use permit. But when it's a development project, when it's a street vacation, if it's a change in natural features protection, we do want the applicant to go one step further. So, process of a public hearing. So staff at the beginning is always going to give a presentation, again on the background, and we try and lay out the facts and do it as neutrally as possible. I know that Attorney Bear is going to talk about this. When a case comes before a board, they may have received letters or attended the applicant's meeting to receive more information on the project. A board member may have. But the intent of a board reviewing these cases is to make a decision on the dais and not in advance. And so the goal for us is to write our staff reports as neutrally as possible, lay out the facts. We do review the criteria, and I'll talk about that in a second, and provide you with staff recommendation based on those criteria to help guide you in considering the case. After staff makes a presentation at the public hearing, the body's welcome to ask staff questions. We always want to allow some space before we go on to the next step. The applicant will come up next and do their presentation. At the Plan Commission, they get about 10 minutes. I think that's pretty similar to what we allow in front of this board. They get to lay out their request, why they're making it, and any information that they think pertinent, including the outreach that they have done. After that, again, this board, Plan Commission, Zoning Board has a chance to ask clarifying questions of the applicant. Staff can also be called back up to ask additional questions. And then we do public comment. Public comment can come in a variety of different ways. Folks can come up to the podium and provide their comment in person. We often receive letters and emails in advance of certain cases, which we distribute to the boards and commission, so you have those in your packets. And for some boards, including Plan Commission, there's a call-in option, so folks can stream the meeting and call in their comments from home. So there's a variety of ways that one can provide comment in the public for the public hearing record or in the public hearing itself. And this is the same across all of these development boards. So after public comment, after the boards have asked all their questions of the applicant or staff, the board has the opportunity to start to deliberate and review the request on their own. It is very important, regardless of which board it is, if there are review criteria that are laid out either by the state or in our ordinances, that is your North Star, that is your guide for how you review and discuss a request. What this does when we have these review criteria in order for us to review all cases starting from the same place. I think it's particularly important because planning has not always been used for positive purposes in the past, and we, as a body of professionals, have used it in unequitable ways. And so starting from a place where everyone is being reviewed from the same criteria, we are not concerned about the applicant, we are concerned about the request. It puts everybody from the start in the same place that you can then start your deliberations and dialogue. It's important to avoid any personal bias when you're discussing this on the dais. And again, it's not about the applicant as the person, it's about the request that they're making. And again, this is a protection for an applicant because everyone is allowed to make a request for their property. It's about what they're requesting. Is it appropriate for that location? Does it meet our criteria? So let's talk about the criteria. These are specific to what the Plan Commission uses and what you will use when you review a request for a zoning map change or a text amendment change. And there are 5 of them. I think it's important to note, and I'll go through and tell you what each of these are with a little bit of background, that when staff provides the information based on the review criteria in the staff report, the lens that staff use is very holistic. It's very high level. We are not just looking at the parcel itself and answering the questions as maybe a neighbor would or the applicant themselves would. We are looking at it from a bigger picture. We're looking at it from the block. We're looking at the surrounding blocks to help answer these questions. And that's what's in our staff reports. So the 5 criteria that relate to a text or map amendment are, is it consistent with the comprehensive plan or master plan? And importantly, within this is for rezoning is a future land use plan. Our master plan includes a future land use plan that's required by the state. And that future land use plan lays out, if a parcel were to change, what would be the appropriate use type or classification to change to. That is different than the zoning district, right? The zoning district is something that is affixed to each parcel. It has very specific dimensional and use standards, and that is how a property must follow. That's what the property follows to develop. The future land use plan is higher level than that. It's saying if a change were to happen, what's the right direction, what's appropriate. And so consistent with the comprehensive plan or master plan starts with, is it consistent with the future land use plan, and then any other elements within the master plan document. But the master plan document includes a lot of different things for the city, right? We talk about housing, we talk about transportation, the environment, and so it's all of those things wrapped in together. So the second criteria is change in conditions. So the extent to which there are conditions that have changed on the parcel, around the parcel, in the city that require or lead to that request making sense. Again, when city staff review this, we look at the bigger area to help answer this question in the staff report, and thinking about all of the conditions, both planning as well as physical changes to development in and around it. The third is community need, and that's whether and the extent to which the proposed amendment demonstrates a community need. And the community need can mean a lot of different things. And it is written in a way that's almost purposely vague, so you are allowed to, as a board, review the case in thinking about what that need may be. And when we think about community need, it could be anything from, developing land that is currently underdeveloped or vacant It could mean new uses in an area where there aren't uses. It could mean improving infrastructure in an area that needs to be improved. It could mean a lot of different things. And again, that kind of high-level thought is what city staff brings in its staff report. The final two criteria are, is the request, is the change compatible with surrounding uses? So this does tie back to both the future land use plan as well as the uses that exist around a site. And whether or not that change is appropriate in that location. Is it compatible with the surrounding uses on all sides, considering all sides? And then finally, development patterns should be considered. Will the change, will the text amendment, will the map amendment result in logical and orderly development pattern? Many of these criteria, they are in our zoning code, and so that is why we adhere to them. Many of them have origins in the state enabling legislation. And so you can think about if a rezoning request, especially for a community that is greenfield, meaning new development, new street patterns, new blocks, development pattern really ties to thinking about, how it fits in with that type of, with the surrounding development and not just a single structure. So you can see that these criteria need to work and be applied to a wide variety of projects that come forth, both to us as the city of Kalamazoo, as well as other cities across the state of Michigan. I'm going to have Charlie come up and talk about a couple of things that are really important to be in mind, and then if you have any questions on anything that I just said, I'm happy to come back up and answer them.
Thank you so much, Christina Anderson, and welcome, Attorney Bear.
Welcome, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager, and Commissioners. I'm glad to be here. So I am going to talk on some things maybe outside the meeting, communications, and conflict of interest. And the slide is referring to initially ex parte communications. That would be one-sided communications or concerning one side of an issue with a party. And I'm also going to talk about, it's not on the slide, but a little bit about communications outside of a meeting between commissioners, because I think that's also important here. Probably inevitably, when there's particularly a significant matter before the commission or a board or commission of the city, you're going to get contacted by somebody. They're going to email you, they're going to call you. They may corner you when you're at the grocery store or out walking your dog or something and want to talk about the issue. And that can seem relatively harmless, but that can create some significant problems. We're talking about matters here where there's going to be a public hearing, and the board or commission is acting as a quasi-judicial body with quasi-judicial authority. You're functioning very much like a court. You have the authority to hear evidence, make decisions, and issue rulings that resemble judicial functions. You're required to provide due process, which is a constitutionally guaranteed fair procedure. That requires considering only evidence and testimony at the public hearing on the matter. As Christina has described, there are certain standards that have to be applied to decisions, and you must consider and discuss how the facts, the evidence, and testimony that you have received at the hearing apply to those standards. You need to be objective. Your decision needs to be based on the facts and not subjective, based on feelings or emotions. And above all, you need to be impartial in making your decision, because that is a critical element of providing due process. Discussing the matter with a person interested on either side of a question before that comes before you can create problems. And that can create accusations that you're in collusion with somebody, you're making a wrong decision, you're not being impartial. Probably the best approach there is to point out your duty of impartiality and that you cannot discuss that matter with them. Remind them that they have the opportunity to appear at the public hearing and express their views for or against the matter, but that you need to be impartial to be fair to everybody involved. For the most part, the OMA, or Open Meetings Act, would not be involved here unless a communication is communicated to other commissioners. And if that involves a quorum, then that could be considered a meeting and deliberation on the issue, which could create open meeting problems. But above all, we're trying to ensure impartiality. And we always need to be aware of a potential conflict of interest. Many of us have other interests, familial relationships, and so forth, that may create a conflict of interest. Broadly defined, a conflict of interest is any interest competing with or adverse to your primary duty of loyalty to the public interest. And that's a general duty that you have. That's also, that duty is found in the City Commission ethics policy at I-1, which recognizes that the stewardship of the public interest must be a primary concern of city commissioners. So you certainly don't want to run afoul of that. There is a conflict if competing interests impair or influence your ability to decide a public question objectively and independently, or which may tend to impair your independence of judgment. Generally, for most boards and commissions, we're looking at financial, familial interests, living within 300 feet of a notice area, or rendering services for a public or private interest on either side of a matter for determination. The city ethics policy at paragraph 1.5 goes into a little more detail on this. In subsection A, a city commissioner will not engage in or accept employment or render services for private or public interest when the employment or service is incompatible or in conflict with the discharge of the commissioner's official duties, or when the employment may tend to impair his or her independence of judgment or action in the performance of the official's duties. Subsection B, city commissioner will not participate in the negotiation or execution of contracts and various other financial matters in which the commissioner has a financial or personal interest. Subsection C, no member of the city commission shall be interested directly or indirectly in the profits of any contract, job, work, or be financially interested directly or indirectly in the sale to the city of any land, material, supplies. Subsection I-6 provides that a city commissioner will not act upon any matter in which they have a material financial interest or where they have a legal or fiduciary duty to another organization or entity, or there exists a personal relationship that may give the appearance of a conflict of interest without disclosing the full nature and extent of the interest to the other members of the city commission on the official record. This disclosure must be publicly made before the time to perform their duty or concurrently with the performance of the duty. Similar duty applies for other boards or commissions. The conflict should be disclosed at the beginning of the meeting, noted on the record. I emphasize the appearance of a conflict because many times you may have associations or interests that it's just not clear. Is that a clear conflict under the rules of ethics, or is it not? Well, what do? You contact city staff, you contact my office, you contact Aaron, you contact me or one of the other attorneys, or city staff, and we discuss that. Is it a conflict or is it not? Do you need to recuse yourself from a vote on the matter? And it may be that there is not technically a conflict because the definition is rather broad, but there could be the appearance of a conflict. And in that case, you may still want to disclose what your interest is and recuse yourself. So that's something we should discuss ahead of time. You're comfortable and confident in what you need to do. You're covered that there's not a conflict of interest. There may be something that a neighbor or a former neighbor has a son who works for a business. Is that a conflict or not? Maybe. Maybe not. Is that going to affect your decision making? Maybe not. Does it appear to be a conflict? Maybe so. So those are things that need to be discussed. So you've disclosed the conflict, and in that case, you don't participate in any discussion on the issue. What do you do then? And our office prefers that you, at that point, leave the dais, and I think it's better to leave the room. Do you have to? Is there a legal requirement that you do that? No. Some municipal attorneys will allow board or commission members who have a conflict to remain on the dais. I don't really advise that. Your body language, your expressions can be interpreted to try and influence others. And you may be sitting there trying to be neutral, but maybe those tacos you had for dinner just aren't setting very well. And, you know, you got indigestion and you're sitting there and not intending to make anything, but it looks like you're trying to make a negative comment physically to what somebody's saying. You step down from the dais, you're out of the room, there's no such allegation. So I think that's the preferred method. And with that, I have nothing further.
Thank you, Attorney Bear, very much. Commissioners, questions for Christina Anderson or Attorney Bear? I don't see any. I think we're all set then. Thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate that. Obviously, important just to review these items because we do have a hearing coming up on an important request for rezoning, so it's good to be prepared for that. So I appreciate so much you took the time to do that. Back to you, Manager Hankins.
Mayor, that's the only item we have on tonight's agenda for presentation.
All right. Only item for the Committee of the Whole?
Yes.
Correct? Thank you. Commissioners, here's an opportunity for commissioner comments. Any commissioners want to make a comment for our Committee of the Whole meeting? Seeing none, just a reminder, there's also another opportunity for commissioner comments at our business meeting that starts at 7, and that is the most likely space for commissioners to take opportunity to make comments on any topic they choose. So our Committee of the Whole meeting is adjourned, and our business meeting will be starting in these chambers in about an hour.
Thanks, Charlie. Well done. I think we need to
You really know your stuff.
Just as a reminder for everybody,
I think we need to